going to make our white whole wheat bread. We have white whole wheat flour that I just milled, and we have 360 grams, or 2 3/4 cup. I like to go by grams though. We have a cup and a half of warm water. It needs to be 110 to no more than 115 degrees. I like to use a thermometer. Some people use their wrist, just where it's warm to the touch but not hot. If it's too cool, your yeast won't dissolve. Too hot, it'll kill the yeast. So I have 1 cup of warm water plus 2 tablespoons. And I've dissolved 1 tablespoon of active dry yeast, not the instant, active dry yeast in it. You can see it's foaming up. That means it's good. And I put 2 teaspoons of sugar in there just to help it foam up. And then we have 1/4 cup of instant potatoes. Now these are not the kind with pearly things that have butter in them. These are just flat instant potatoes, 1/4 of a cup. Potatoes help make bread really tender and keep it moist. I'm going to do 1.5 teaspoons of salt, 2 tablespoons of alternative milk here, and you can use whatever kind you want. Milk helps make your bread tender. Milk and eggs. I'm not using eggs in this one though. Milk and eggs, Vita-Wheat gluten, potato flakes, vinegar, all help with keeping your bread soft. This is really foamed up. I don't know if you can see that, but it's a good inch of foam. It doesn't have to foam up that much, but this is very foamed up. It means the yeast is good. Now if you used an instant yeast, not rapid rise, but instant, then you could just mix it in with your water and flour. But I like to see, for this one anyway, I had the active dry, and that's what I'm using. I kind of like to use that too. I like to use a dough scraper. It's really handy because we're going to mix this bread by hand. We are not going to use a mixer. So if you can use a mixer if you want to. Just don't overheat your mixer. You know, just be careful with that. I'm always cautious with a mixer because you can burn them up really easily. This is 1/4 cup of honey and 2 tablespoons of olive oil. I'll put it in. Use my Danish dough hook. I just find this sort of hand kneading tool. You don't have to have it, but it sure makes things easier. The honey's kind of thick in there. About half of our flour. Not all of it yet. Just about half. We'll mix that up. We're going to go ahead and add in our other ingredients here in just a minute. Okay. It's kind of a soupy dough is all this is. Not even a dough yet, really. It's just a little soupy mixture. We're going to add in our Vita-Wheat gluten. Mix that up. I like to mix each part as I go. Better than just dumping it all in there. I also save my salt for last because I don't like putting the salt next to the yeast. Some people say it doesn't hurt. Some people say it does. I just save it for last. I'm going to put in my potato flakes. It's really kind of like a batter. It's almost like a thick pancake batter. We're going to add in our milk. 2 tablespoons of milk. We're going to add in our 1.5 teaspoons of salt and our tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. You never want more vinegar than the amount of yeast. So we had a tablespoon of yeast, so we can use a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. But you don't want to do more. You want to keep it the same. Whole wheat bread, you know, the whole wheat grains, when you grind them up, we didn't take any bran out. They can really keep your bread from rising. Gets little sharp bran pieces in there. So I kind of like to really mix this dough well and really build the gluten in it. And we'll do that as we go. We're going to add in more flour now. And it'll start getting thicker the more flour we add in there. And we'll see how it goes. You only put enough flour in to make your dough stiff. You don't want too much flour, but you want enough. And you can see this is still pretty wet. If I pick this up, it would be sticking to my hands. It's very wet. So it's not ready yet. So we'll add some more flour. Just add a little bit at a time until you get it the way you want it. When it gets thick, sort of getting the line sticks together and doesn't stick to your hands, at that point, we don't need any more flour. You'll start judging bread as you make bread. You can judge how it looks, how it feels. You can't feel this, but you can certainly see it. Now this looks like a big shaggy mess. And that's okay, that's what it's supposed to look like at this point. Again, you could do this part with a mixer, but you certainly don't have to. I'm going to start using this in a minute and I'll show you how to work with that. It's getting there. I'm going to maybe discontinue this just for a minute and use our dough scraper. Dough scraper is really good. We're going to cover it and we're going to leave it in the refrigerator overnight. I don't know if I want all that in there just yet. I'm going to take a little bit out just in case. We might not need it all. We'll see. I used your scraper. These little scrapers are just invaluable to kneading bread because they really help pick it up and scrape off the bottom of your bowl. The dough is getting pretty stiff looking here. See, it's sticky, but it's not, well, it is sticking to my hand some. Not a whole lot, not like it would have a while ago, but you're going to get it where it won't stick to your hands. And so we're going to knead it a little bit, and what I'm going to do is pour it out on this glass tray so you can better see what I'm doing. It's just easier for you to see it. We're just gonna, I'm glad I took that flour out because I don't think we're gonna need it. But if we do, we can always add it. That up, get that flour scraped up, fold it over. We're gonna need some. The dough kind of, the flour hydrated to get it kind of mixed together. The flour mainly just needs to be hydrated in with your dough at this point. Then we'll start building our gluten strands. We'll need it some. I like the feel of the dough, and I know when I've got it right. See, that dough's getting more elastic, but it still tears. Do you see the tears in there? It's not ready yet by any means. Not bad. You're just pushing gently. You're not wanting to tear it. Push gently down, pull back, push, pull. Feeling? I don't feel as many grains. I still see some flour specks in there though. 10 minutes to be exact. The dough is still resting. I want to talk to you a little bit about what we're going to do with this dough. This particular bread we're going to put the dough in an oiled dough and we're going to cover it very tightly with plastic wrap. It has to be airtight. We're going to put it in the refrigerator overnight. The reason I'm going to do that is because it's already late at night and I don't want to bake this bread tonight. Your alternative for baking it in the daytime, you can go ahead and knead this dough into what they call the window pane test. And when it gets to the window pane test where you can pull the dough and stretch down and it doesn't break apart easily and you can see light through it. If I hold it up to that light, I can see it. That's called the window pane test. When you get your bread to that stage, now all bread that doesn't work with, but it does work with this bread. When you get it to that stage, then you're ready to either shape it, put it in your pans, let it rise a little bit, a half inch or inch above the top of the pan, and then cover it and let it rise, and then bake it off. I cannot leave this on the counter all night because it does have the potatoes and it has milk in it. When you have eggs and milk and butter and things in bread, it's called an enriched dough. You cannot leave that out overnight because it will start drawing bacteria. Your doughs with just flour, water, even some oil, and salt, you could leave that all night, cover it and leave it out. But it can over ferment on you because if it over ferments, it's going to kind of ruin the texture of your bread. In the refrigerator, it slows down that rising process because it gets cooler and it's not, probably not, it will not over ferment in your refrigerator. It's unlikely. But this will rise quite a bit because I've got quite a bit of yeast in here, a tablespoon. So I'm going to, in the morning, I will shape it. We'll make our bread and let it rise. It'll take longer to rise because it's cold, but that's okay too. It'll work. So if you wanted to for a weekend dinner, you were having guests, you could do your bread overnight like this, bake it off the next morning, and it'd be fresh for that meal that day. All you got to do is heat it up. It'd be good. Or you could make it early in the morning and let it, well, not make it early, but make it later in the day. Give yourself enough time to go through the steps, obviously, and let it rise 3 hours or more anyway. And you can make your bread fresh that day. So the dough has really, see, it was smaller. I had a ball, tight ball there. It's flattened out. I wet my hands just a little bit. Take my, actually, it's not really sticking. Just going to stretch and fold. Stretch and fold. This dough is really getting in good shape now. Stretch and fold. Stretch and fold. It's getting in so much better shape. But it's still tearing some on top, so it's not ready yet by any means, but it's going to go in the fridge here in a little bit. We're going to kind of knead this up just a little bit because I want to get it in a little bit better shape. If you wanted to use this dough right away, you would have to knead it more, probably add a little bit more, tiny bit of flour. It has to be more smooth and elastic than it is. And that's just a matter of looking at your dough, checking your dough, see what it looks like, and then see what it needs. And you'll get to know that. You'll get to know your dough. And different breads are a little different, but once you learn the basics, or basic loaf, and this make any kind of bread. But you kind of get the basics down. You want to get to what that dough should look like. When I pull this apart and it tears, if you can see that, it's shaggy looking, it's not ready. But if you under knead it, you'll have crumbly bread. It just won't make it be a little easier. You'll get to work it. And it's not as tacky as it was, but it's still tacky. It should be a little, but it's just getting in better and better and better shape. Now hopefully we can have a good window pane test here. I see more light and it's not looking as rough, it's looking more smooth. And you're not going to see light everywhere, but you're going to see light through that dough. And hold it up to the light really well. You just gently stretch it out. And if it's in good shape, it shouldn't tear. You just start getting thin. I see some light through there. See a little bitty tiny hole, but that's okay. The light's coming through there. I think we got it. Could use a tiny bit more maybe, but if I stopped here, I'd probably give it just a few more, just because I need to work out. Stretching out, I can see light through it. It's in good shape. We're going to let it go. I like to take my dough then, just shape it around with your hands. Gets that tight. Pull it down first. Get it tucked under it. Then gets that tight stretch on the top. Put it in a greased bowl. Turn it to get all sides greased so it won't dry out. And you really want this airtight, so use some tight plastic wrap and keep it in the morning. This morning, and the dough rose up, but it didn't go all the way to the top. It's about double. It needs to. I didn't have to punch it down any. It worked fine. But you don't want it to rise up and overproof. That would not be the goal. That would not be good. So we're going to take our little dough scraper, get our dough out. Okay, the dough is really soft and supple. We're going to get ready to make our loaf. Now I've got my loaf pan, just a normal I believe it's 9 by 5 size loaf pan. I have one that's a 10 by 5. It's bigger, but this one should fit in the 9 by 5. Now take your dough and just gently deflate it. Just gently deflate it. You don't have to beat on it or anything like that. You just gently deflate it. Roll this out. Dough is really cold because it's been in the refrigerator, so we'll try to warm it up a little bit with my hands. It will warm up some. It's going to take longer to rise though because it's been cold, obviously. So it's going to take a little bit longer to rise. If you let it sit out too long though, then it will start rising before you work with it, and you don't want that to happen. So we're just going to take our time and work with it. We'll get it to about a maybe 9 by 12 or so, just so it's going to fit in our pan. Nice size. Want it big enough because we're going to fold it in half and thirds, and then we're going to roll it out. So you want it big enough to make all that happen. And you want those air bubbles out of the dough. So you're kind of degassing it in a way. You just keep working with it a little bit. Again, it's cold dough, so it's a little bit harder to work with. But sometimes it's convenient to put your dough in the fridge overnight. We're going to take our dough and we're going to fold over the side and push it down with the heel of our hand. Just really push it down and mash those air bubbles out. it out, but you want those air bubbles out. You want it pretty much flattened out. Then you're going to take this side and pull it up a third of the way. We'll mash it down the same way with our hands, palm of our hand, that part of your hand. Smash it down. Kind of keep your ends pushed in there. And you want to pinch this up because you want to kind of pinch it together, then mash it down. Now, I've got a log here. What we're going to do with this log, flatten it out a little bit more. And start rolling this up. Just take a piece and roll and kind of stretch just gently. Roll and then gently stretch. Roll and then gently stretch. You can use your thumb and just kind of pull that up there. Thumb, turn it around, you see it better. Take your thumb and just kind of push down and roll back. Push it back with your thumb and then roll up. Just do this gently. Keep your ends tucked in as well as you can. Take your thumb, roll down. Thumb, roll down. If you move this a little bit closer, you might be able to see it better. Just take your thumb and push them back this way on my thumb, back towards the roll. And I'm going to roll. I'm going to roll. You can do this with two thumbs. You can do it, roll it at the same time. Let's spread this out a little bit. Make it more even on the end. Roll. Push back with your thumb and roll. That just helps keep all those air bubbles out. The air bubbles is what's going to make those great big holes in your bread. Sometimes there'll be a big hole in the center. You can't make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches with that, obviously. And it doesn't make for pretty loaves, so you don't want that. Some holes are good in crusty breads and things, but with this kind of sandwich bread, you don't really want a lot of holes in it. Now we're going to shape this up and make it more oblong, because it's obviously, I shape it. You want it kind of the length of your pan anyway, or close to the length of your pan. You want a good tight roll. Bottom up, really get it tight, pinch it out. You pull it down with your hands, you're really tightening that top and making that dough really have a taut top. It stretches down, and you want to do that too. Then we're going to take our dough. We're going to take this gently and just pull it down. What we're going to do is we're going to tuck this under. And we're going to do the other end. And we'll come back and work with them just a little bit. We'll just take it down gently. Tuck it under. Then you can roll it over. And again, you can pinch up that dough. This cold dough, it's not one that stick together as well as it would if it were warmer, obviously. But you can pinch that together. Pinch this up. Our loaf. When it really taut, push it down, get any air bubbles out. Push it under with my hands. Keep the ends tucked under. And pull it down real taut. Really taut, and that makes your loaf a little longer. Pinch my ends. Take your hands and just cup them under. It's going to make that loaf longer. It's also warming up the dough with my hands too. I just keep pinching my ends under. Make sure they stay under. All right, crust on there. Size. You want it almost the length of your pan, obviously. A warmer dough would be a little easier to do, but it's okay. We're gonna let it rest a minute. You're resting, that's a good thing. It needs to relax, especially when it's cold like this. This is looking good. Now, I'm going to put sunflower seeds on the top. They're salted and toasted. And I have a damp paper towel. You can do two things. You can do the damp paper towel, or you can brush egg wash on the top and then put your sunflower seeds on. But anywhere that damp, that we get this dough damp, the sunflower seeds will stick. Just got a few in my bowl, enough for a loaf. I'm going to take this and just roll it. Anywhere I get it wet, it's coming apart again. Punch it back together. Just keep pinching it together if it comes apart. Cold dough, it's really hard to stick. Doesn't want to stick to each other. We're going to make it stick. And I'm going to get the side, just roll it. You don't want it soppy wet, but you want it wet enough that these will stick. I'm going to dump these out. That's going to be easier to do. Press that in there gently. Anywhere it's wet, they'll stick. Nice, pretty loaf there. A little more right there. Beautiful loaf with sunflower seeds. I like the seeds, poppy seeds, sunflower seeds, all kinds of seeds on the top. We're going to let this sit here and rise, and it should rise up above. I'm going to cover it with plastic wrap, but it'll get about a ½ inch above the sides of the bowl. And then we're ready to bake it. Okay, our bread has risen. You can see it's up. Let me show you a little better. It's up over the rim is here, and it's the top part of it's maybe an inch above the rim. The outer edges are not. This part probably could rise just a little bit more. I think I'll let this rise just a few more minutes while my oven is preheating to 375. And then we're going to bake it off about 20. I'm going to check it in 20 minutes. I'm going to check it in 30, and then every 5 minutes thereafter until it's done. I use the thermometer, and I like to get it to 190 degrees on the inside. Not just on the kind of bottom will be hollow sounding when you tap on it, and golden brown. Don't underbake your bread. If you think you're getting it too dark, unless you're used to bread baking, you may not be. Because if it's just barely brown, it's probably not done in the center. So we'll let this rise a little bit more, maybe 10 more minutes, and then I'm going to bake it off and I'll be back. Okay, our bread is out of the oven and it looks amazing. This bread is bendable, just like white bread, like your kids like sometimes. It's soft, it's supple. Sunflower seeds are falling off a little bit. I did bake it 20 minutes. I checked it, it wasn't done. I did 10 more minutes, checked it, it was almost done to get that 190. So I did 5 more minutes. So it's a total of 35 minutes for mine. Every oven's going to be different. I use the oven thermometer. But the texture on that is just, it's just perfect. This is really, really good bread. I hope you'll try this. I'll have a little better on my bread too, but I hope you'll try this. That butter's cold and it doesn't tear up the bread when I spread it on because it's not crumbly. The bread is not crumbly. You can make sandwiches with this. You can make French toast. You can just eat it with butter and jelly and honey or however you want to eat it. You can freeze it. I like to just go ahead and slice it a lot of times. Freeze it because we don't eat a whole loaf of bread. Usually I make mini loaves, but I wanted you to see a whole loaf. It really rolls up. It's not like dense and heavy. It's just really good. Like I said, it's real bendable and soft and supple. And you can freeze it in the slices and just take out what you want. I like to do that. So I hope you'll try this and let me know how yours turns out.